The certified letter arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was restocking my vegetable stand with fresh tomatoes from my greenhouse. And when I opened it, I nearly dropped a basket of heirloom varieties worth $50 onto the concrete driveway of my home in Oakmont, Pennsylvania. My name is Nathan Hart, and I had been running a small vegetable stand in front of my property for the past 3 months. Nothing fancy, just a wooden structure I built myself with my own 2 hands, displaying the organic produce I grew in my backyard. The stand had become popular with neighbors and passers-by who appreciated fresh, locally grown vegetables at reasonable prices. I prided myself on growing everything without pesticides, using only organic methods I had learned from my grandfather who farmed in rural Pennsylvania his entire life. The letter was from the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association, signed by their president, Karen Kendrick. The fine was for $2,000 for what they called an unauthorized commercial structure creating an eyesore and violating community standards. I read the letter 3 times, each time feeling my blood pressure rise a little higher. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number listed at the bottom of the letter. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. Oakmont Hills HOA, this is Patricia speaking. Hi, this is Nathan Hart from 342 Maple Drive. I just received a fine for $2,000 regarding my vegetable stand. There was a pause, then some typing. Yes, Mr. Hart. The board reviewed your property last week during their monthly inspection. Your vegetable stand violates Section 12.4 of the HOA bylaws regarding commercial operations on residential properties. I need to speak with Karen Kendrick directly. This is ridiculous. Mrs. Kendrick is available for appointments on Thursdays between 2 and 4. Would you like to schedule something? I gritted my teeth. Yes, this Thursday, 2 o'clock. I will put you down. Please bring payment or a payment plan proposal for the fine. Good day, Mr. Hart. She hung up before I could respond. I stood there in my driveway staring at my vegetable stand. It was not an eyesore. I had built it from cedar wood, stained it a pleasant honey color, and kept it immaculately clean. The vegetables were arranged neatly in wooden crates. There was even a small chalkboard where I wrote the prices and fun facts about the produce. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, walked over from across the street. She was in her 70s, a sweet woman who bought tomatoes and cucumbers from me every week. Nathan, dear, is everything all right? You look upset. I showed her the letter. Her eyes widened as she read. $2,000. That is absurd. Your stand is lovely. My daughter in Seattle pays twice as much for organic vegetables, half as fresh as yours. The HOA disagrees. Mrs. Chen shook her head. That Karen Kendrick has been a nightmare since she became president. Last month, she tried to fine the Johnsons because their mailbox was the wrong shade of black. Black? Who cares about shades of black? I thanked Mrs. Chen for her support and went inside. My house was a modest 3-bedroom colonial I had purchased 5 years ago when I moved back to Pennsylvania from Colorado. I had worked in commercial real estate development in Denver for 15 years before deciding I wanted a quieter life closer to where I grew up. The irony of my background was not lost on me as I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the HOA fine. What Karen Kendrick and her HOA board did not know, what nobody in the neighborhood knew except my lawyer and business partners, was that I owned the commercial development rights for this entire district of Oakmont. When the original developer went bankrupt 7 years ago, I had purchased the rights through my real estate investment company, Hart Development LLC. It was a smart investment at the time. The property included not just residential lots, but also the commercial corridor along Route 910 that bordered our neighborhood. The commercial permit I held allowed me to operate any lawful business within the district boundaries, which included my own property. I had done my research thoroughly before setting up my vegetable stand. I knew exactly what I was legally allowed to do. The HOA had no authority to override a commercial operating permit issued by Allegheny County. Thursday could not come fast enough. I spent the next 2 days serving customers at my vegetable stand, each transaction making me more determined to fight this absurd fine. People loved the stand. Children would stop by after school for cherry tomatoes. Couples would browse on evening walks. One regular customer, a chef from a restaurant in downtown Pittsburgh, bought bulk quantities of my specialty herbs. Thursday afternoon, I dressed in business casual attire and drove to the community center where the HOA maintained their office. The building was relatively new, built with fees collected from homeowners. I had always found it excessive, but I paid my dues on time every quarter without complaint. The office was exactly what I expected. Bland beige walls, motivational posters about community spirit, and a desk where Patricia, the receptionist, sat typing on a computer. She looked up as I entered. "Mr. Hart." "That is me. Mrs. Kendrick will see you now. Second door on the left." I walked down the short hallway and knocked on the door marked President. "Come in." Karen Kendrick was exactly the type of person I had imagined from our phone interactions. She appeared to be in her early 50s, with blonde hair cut in a sharp bob, wearing a blazer that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. Her office was decorated with various certificates and photos of her shaking hands with local politicians. "Mr. Hart, please sit." I sat in the chair across from her desk. She folded her hands and gave me a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I assume you received our letter regarding the violation at your property." "I did. I am here to dispute it." Her smile tightened. "The violation is quite clear, Mr. Hart. Section 12.4 of our bylaws explicitly prohibits commercial operations on residential properties. Your vegetable stand is commercial in nature. You exchange goods for money. Therefore, you are in violation. I have a commercial operating permit for this property." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Mr. Hart, this is a residential zone. Commercial permits do not apply here. Perhaps you are confused about the zoning laws." I reached into the folder I had brought and pulled out a copy of my commercial permit, issued by Allegheny County. I slid it across her desk. "This permit allows me to operate any lawful commercial activity within the boundaries of the Oakmont Hills Development District. My property falls within those boundaries." Karen picked up the document, her eyes scanning it quickly. I watched her expression change from condescending amusement to confusion, then to something resembling concern. "This must be some kind of mistake. How did you obtain this?" "I purchased the commercial development rights when the original developer declared bankruptcy. Hart Development LLC owns those rights. I am Hart Development LLC." Her face flushed red. "That is impossible. The HOA would have been notified." "The HOA has no legal standing in commercial permitting processes. This is between the county and the permit holder, which is me." Karen set the document down, her jaw tight. "I will need to verify this with our attorney." "You do that. In the meantime, I expect the fine to be rescinded immediately." "The fine stands until I confirm this information." I stood up. "Then you will be hearing from my attorney about harassment and abuse of HOA authority." "I know my rights, Mrs. Kendrick. I suggest you learn yours." I left before she could respond, feeling a mixture of satisfaction and frustration. I knew this was not over. People like Karen Kendrick did not back down easily when challenged. That evening I called my attorney, Robert Mills, who had handled all my real estate transactions for the past decade. I explained the situation. "They cannot touch you, Nathan," Robert said. "Your permit is ironclad. I will send them a letter tomorrow outlining the legal standing and demanding they rescind the fine. If they refuse, we can pursue legal action for harassment." "I appreciate it, Robert. Just curious, why did you set up a vegetable stand? You are not exactly hurting for money." I smiled. "Because I like growing vegetables and I like my neighbors. It is not about the money. It is about doing something real with my hands instead of just shuffling papers and signing contracts." Robert chuckled. "Fair enough. I will handle this, do not worry." But I did worry. Not about the legal aspects. I knew I was on solid ground there, but about what Karen might do next. In my experience dealing with difficult people in business, those who feel their authority challenged often escalate rather than concede. I was right to worry. Friday morning, I found a notice taped to my vegetable stand. The HOA was calling an emergency meeting for Monday evening to discuss ongoing violations and community standards. I was specifically named in the notice as a topic of discussion. Mrs. Chen saw me reading the notice and came over. "They are really going after you, aren't they? Seems that way. My husband and I will be at that meeting. So will the Patels and the Johnsons. We are going to speak in your favor." Her support touched me. "Thank you, Mrs. Chen. That means a lot." Over the weekend, I continued operating my stand as usual. Several neighbors stopped by, many of them expressing support and saying they would attend Monday's meeting. A few, however, avoided eye contact as they walked past. I recognized them as the types who blindly supported whatever the HOA decided, probably fearful of becoming targets themselves. Sunday afternoon, I received an email from Robert Mills. He had sent a formal letter to the HOA, with copies to their attorney, explaining my legal position and demanding the fine be rescinded within 5 business days. He also warned that continued harassment would result in legal action. Monday evening arrived. The community center meeting room was packed. I had never seen this many people at an HOA meeting before. Usually these things drew maybe 20 residents, mostly retirees with nothing better to do. Tonight, there were easily 70 people crammed into a room designed for 50. I sat near the middle, flanked by Mrs. Chen and her husband David. The Patel family sat directly behind me. Mike Johnson, who had his own battle with Karen over the mailbox, gave me a thumbs up from across the room. Karen called the meeting to order, flanked by the other board members. Vice President Douglas Bennett, a stern man in his 60s. Treasurer Linda Martinez, who always looked uncomfortable at these meetings. And Secretary Todd Phillips, who spent most meetings playing on his phone. "Thank you all for coming," Karen began, her voice carrying that artificial sweetness that set my teeth on edge. "We have an important matter to address regarding community standards and the integrity of our neighborhood." She went on for several minutes about the importance of maintaining property values and adhering to bylaws. Finally, she got to the point. Mr. Nathan Hart, who lives at 342 Maple Drive, has erected an unauthorized commercial structure on his property in direct violation of our bylaws. Despite being fined $2,000, he refuses to pay and continues operating his vegetable stand. She projected photos of my stand onto a screen, making it look as dramatic as possible. To be honest, in the photos, my stand looked pretty good. Clean, organized, attractive even. "This sets a dangerous precedent," Karen continued. "If we allow one resident to operate a commercial business from their property, what is next? Will we have people opening auto repair shops in their driveways, running daycare centers that generate traffic and noise? Our neighborhood is zoned residential for a reason. Several people nodded. I remained calm, waiting for my turn to speak. Mr. Hart has claimed he has some kind of permit that allows this activity. Our attorney has reviewed this claim. While Mr. Hart does indeed hold a commercial development permit, our attorney believes this permit does not override HOA authority regarding property aesthetics and community standards. That was a lie, or at minimum, a severe misrepresentation. My permit absolutely superseded their authority. I would like to open the floor to community comments before the board votes on additional penalties. A hand shot up immediately. It was Mrs. Chen. Yes, Margaret. Mrs. Chen stood, her small frame somehow projecting strength. I have lived in this neighborhood for 23 years. In that time, I have seen this HOA fine people for the most ridiculous things. My azaleas were the wrong color. The Johnsons' mailbox was the wrong shade. The Patels had their holiday lights up 2 days past the deadline. Meanwhile, real problems go ignored. The playground equipment is rusted. The community pool has not been resurfaced in a decade, but you find time to harass a young man who is providing fresh, healthy food to his neighbors at fair prices. This is absurd. Several people applauded. Karen's face darkened. Mrs. Chen, I appreciate your input, but this is about following rules that we all agreed to when we purchased our homes. Another hand went up. Mike Johnson stood without waiting to be called. Nathan Stand has done more for community spirit than this board has in years. People stop and talk. Neighbors meet each other. Kids learn about where food comes from. What exactly is the problem here? It looks nice. It is not generating traffic or noise. I think this is a personal vendetta. Mr. Johnson, that is out of line, Karen snapped. Is it? You tried to fine me $300 because my mailbox was slightly darker than the approved shade of black. You forced the Rodriguez family to cut down their tree because it was 6 inches taller than regulations allowed. That tree was 20 years old. This board has become more interested in control than in actual community improvement. More applause. Karen looked flustered. Douglas Bennett leaned toward his microphone. If we allow violations, the entire structure of community governance breaks down. Where do we draw the line? I decided it was time to speak. I stood up. May I address the board? Karen looked like she wanted to refuse, but with so many people watching, she nodded curtly. I walked to the front of the room, carrying my folder. Mrs. Kendrick mentioned that your attorney reviewed my permit. What your attorney should have told you is that my commercial development permit, issued by Allegheny County, grants me the explicit right to operate lawful commercial activities on any property within the Oakmont Hills Development District boundaries. This permit supersedes HOA authority because it was issued by the county government under Pennsylvania state law. I pulled out several documents from my folder and placed them on the table in front of the board members. This is the original development agreement from when Oakmont Hills was first constructed. This is the bankruptcy filing from Oakmont Development Corporation. And this is the transfer of commercial development rights to Hart Development LLC, which I own. I legally purchased these rights 7 years ago. Karen stared at the documents. That does not give you the right to ignore our bylaws. Actually, it does when those bylaws attempt to restrict lawful commercial activity that I am permitted to conduct. Your bylaws cannot override county permits and state law. Our attorney disagrees, Karen insisted. Then your attorney is wrong, or you misunderstood what they told you. I am happy to have my attorney speak directly with yours to clear this up. Douglas Bennett picked up one of the documents, reading it carefully. His expression changed as he read. Karen, this looks legitimate. He owns the commercial development rights. I do not care what he owns, Karen snapped, momentarily dropping her composure. He cannot just do whatever he wants. Within the bounds of my permit and the law I can, I said firmly, and I have been nothing but respectful to this community. My stand is clean, attractive, and provides a service people appreciate. I have done nothing wrong. You are undermining the authority of this board, Karen said, her voice rising. No, I am exercising my legal rights. There is a difference. The room erupted in discussion. People were talking over each other, some supporting me, others expressing concern about precedent. Karen tried to restore order by banging a gavel. We will vote on whether to increase Mr. Hart's fine to $5,000 and pursue legal action to have his structure removed. You will lose that legal action and potentially face liability for harassment, I said calmly. That is a risk this board is willing to take. All in favor? Karen raised her hand immediately. Douglas hesitated, then raised his. Todd looked up from his phone, seemingly confused about what he was voting on, and raised his hand. Linda Martinez did not raise hers. Motion passes 3-1. Mr. Hart, you now owe $5,000 in fines, and the HOA will be filing a legal motion to have your structure removed. I nodded slowly. Then I will see you in court. I walked out of the meeting, followed by Mrs. Chen and several other neighbors. In the parking lot, at least a dozen people came up to express their support. This is wrong, one woman said. Completely wrong. We will testify on your behalf if it goes to court, Mike Johnson added. I thanked them all, but inside I was frustrated. This was going to be expensive and time-consuming, even though I knew I would win. Karen had let her ego turn this into a crusade. The next morning, I called Robert Mills and filled him in on the meeting. They voted to increase your fine and pursue legal action. Robert sounded incredulous. After you showed them your permits, Karen Kendrick is not interested in what is legal. She is interested in control. All right, let them file their motion. We will respond with a counter-suit for harassment, abuse of authority, and legal fees. I will also file a complaint with the county about HOA overreach. This is exactly the kind of case that sets good precedent. I just want to sell vegetables, Robert. I know. But sometimes you have to fight to do even simple things. Give me a few days. I will have a strategy put together. I continued operating my stand, though I noticed Karen drove by multiple times each day, sometimes stopping to take photos. It was blatant harassment, but I documented each instance with my own photos and time stamps. Wednesday afternoon, a county inspector showed up. He was a friendly guy named Tom Riley who had been with the county for 20 years. Got a complaint about your vegetable stand, he said, clipboard in hand. Mind if I take a look? Go ahead. He walked around the stand, checking the structure, examining my produce displays, even testing the stability of the shelving. After about 15 minutes, he came back over. Everything looks good. You have your permit displayed, your structure is safe, you are maintaining proper food handling standards. Who complained? The HOA president. He rolled his eyes. HOA, I swear they cause more problems than they solve. You are fine, Mr. Hart. Keep doing what you are doing. He gave me a copy of his inspection report, marking everything as compliant. I added it to my growing folder of documentation. Thursday, I received a formal legal notice. The HOA had filed a motion in Allegheny County Court seeking an injunction to shut down my vegetable stand. They were claiming I was operating an illegal business, creating a public nuisance and diminishing property values. Robert Mills called me an hour after I received the notice. I just got served with their complaint. Nathan, this is actually good for us. How is being sued good? Because they are making claims that are demonstrably false. You are not operating illegally. You have all the proper permits. Public nuisance requires evidence of disturbance to the community, and you have multiple neighbors willing to testify that your stand improves the community. And diminished property values. We can pull sales data showing property values in your neighborhood have actually increased since you opened your stand. So what happens now? We file our response and our countersuit. I am going to argue that the HOA is engaging in targeted harassment, abuse of authority, and attempting to deprive you of your legal rights. I am also going to seek a restraining order preventing them from further interference with your business operations. Will that work? 95% sure it will. Judges do not look kindly on HOAs that try to override county permits and state law. Plus, the precedent is clear. Your commercial development rights supersede their bylaws. The legal process moved slowly. We filed our response and countersuit in early December. The court scheduled a hearing for mid-January. In the meantime, I had to continue paying my HOA dues, which felt like adding insult to injury, but Robert advised against giving them any additional ammunition. Karen did not make things easy. She sent me 2 more violation notices, one claiming my garden shed was not the approved color and another saying my mailbox needed repainting. Both were obviously retaliatory. I ignored them and forwarded them to Robert. She also tried to get other neighbors to complain about me. I know this because several neighbors came to tell me she had approached them, asking leading questions about traffic, noise, and property values. When they did not give her the answers she wanted, she apparently became hostile. Mrs. Chen told me Karen had threatened her, suggesting that if she continued supporting me, the HOA might find violations on her property too. I told her to go ahead and try, Mrs. Chen said proudly. My property is immaculate. I dare her to find something wrong. December was cold in Pennsylvania, but I adapted my stand for winter vegetables. Kale, winter squash, root vegetables, and greens from my greenhouse. Business actually increased. People liked having access to fresh vegetables during the holidays. One afternoon in mid-December, a news van pulled up. A reporter named Jessica Santos from a Pittsburgh television station got out with a cameraman. Mr. Hart, I am with Channel 7 News. We heard about your situation with the HOA. Would you be willing to talk to us? I hesitated. I did not particularly want media attention, but I also thought public awareness might help. Sure. She interviewed me for about 20 minutes, asking about the vegetable stand, my permits, and the HOA's response. I kept my answers factual and calm, avoiding personal attacks on Karen. Why do you think the HOA is fighting this so hard? Jessica asked. I think some people confuse authority with control. The HOA has authority to enforce reasonable rules that maintain community standards, but they do not have control over legal rights granted by the county and state. That distinction matters. The story aired that evening. It was a sympathetic piece that made Karen and the HOA look petty and controlling. They showed clips of my stand, interviewed neighbors who supported me, and highlighted the absurdity of a $5,000 fine for selling vegetables. I thought the publicity might make Karen back down. I was wrong. The next morning, I found my vegetable stand vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "illegal" across the front and smashed several crates of vegetables. My first instinct was to check my security camera, which I had installed weeks ago after Karen started her harassment campaign. The footage was clear. Around 3 in the morning, a car had pulled up. 2 people got out, wearing hoodies and masks, and vandalized the stand. The angle did not capture their faces, but it did capture the license plate of the vehicle. I called the police. Officer Mike Daniels arrived within 30 minutes. "This is clearly vandalism," he said, reviewing the footage on his phone. "We will run the plates." "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "I have been in a dispute with the HOA. Their president, Karen Kendrick, has been harassing me for months about this stand." "The vegetable stand. I saw the news story. My wife loves it, by the way. She bought tomatoes from you over the summer." "Thanks. I do not know if Karen did this herself, but the timing is suspicious. We will investigate. File a report with your insurance if you need to replace anything." The plates came back registered to a rental company. Officer Daniels pulled the rental records, which showed the vehicle had been rented by Douglas Bennett, the HOA vice president. 2 days later, police arrested Douglas Bennett and his adult son, Craig Bennett, for vandalism. They both confessed, saying they were trying to scare me into removing the stand. Under questioning, Douglas admitted Karen had suggested they send a message, but claimed she did not explicitly tell them to vandalize the property. The police brought Karen in for questioning. I was not privy to those conversations, but Robert Mills kept me updated as information became available through the legal process. Karen denied any involvement in the vandalism, but text messages between her and Douglas told a different story. She had sent messages like, "Someone needs to make him understand this is not acceptable, and if the law will not stop him, maybe something else will." While not explicit instructions, the messages showed she had encouraged the idea. The district attorney was considering charges of conspiracy to commit vandalism. The story exploded in local media. The HOA president potentially involved in criminal activity. News crews were camped outside the community center and Karen's house. Neighbors were outraged. An emergency HOA meeting was called to discuss the board's future. I attended that meeting, which was even more packed than the previous one. This time, the mood was different. People were angry at the board, not divided about my vegetable stand. Karen tried to maintain control, but residents shouted her down. "You encouraged vandalism of a neighbor's property," one man yelled. "You abused your position." Someone else added. Linda Martinez, the treasurer who had voted against the fine increase, stood up. "I am calling for a vote of no confidence in our current board president. Karen's actions have embarrassed this community and potentially exposed us to legal liability." The vote was overwhelming. Karen was removed as president by a margin of 73-4. Douglas, facing criminal charges, resigned immediately. The remaining board members appointed Linda as interim president. Linda's first action was to address me directly. "Mr. Hart, on behalf of the Oakmont Hills Homeowners Association, I apologize for the harassment you have endured. The fines against you are rescinded, effective immediately. We acknowledge your legal right to operate your vegetable stand and welcome the positive contribution it makes to our community." The room applauded. I nodded, accepting the apology, though part of me still felt the sting of the past months. In January, the court hearing for the original lawsuit took place. With the HOA having dropped their case and apologized, the hearing was brief. Judge Patricia Morrison dismissed the HOA's claims and awarded me attorney's fees and damages for harassment. The total came to $37,000, to be paid by the HOA's insurance. Karen faced charges of conspiracy to commit vandalism. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal: 1 year of probation, 200 hours of community service, and restitution for the damage to my property. Douglas and Craig Bennett received similar sentences, though Douglas also faced enhanced penalties for orchestrating the vandalism. By February, things had mostly returned to normal. I continued operating my vegetable stand, which had become even more popular after all the media attention. People drove from surrounding towns to buy vegetables and take photos with the famous stand. Mrs. Chen became my most regular customer, stopping by twice a week. The Patels started helping me on busy Saturday mornings, bringing their teenage son who wanted to learn about organic farming. Mike Johnson built a small seating area near the stand where neighbors could sit and chat. The HOA, under Linda's leadership, became more reasonable. They updated the bylaws to clarify that legal commercial permits superseded aesthetic restrictions. They also established a grievance process to prevent future abuse of authority. I used some of the settlement money to expand my greenhouse and diversify my crops. I started growing specialty mushrooms and microgreens for local restaurants. The vegetable stand became a genuine small business, employing 2 part-time workers during peak seasons. One warm day in April, I was restocking lettuce when a car pulled up. A woman in her 30s got out looking nervous. "Are you Nathan Hart?" "I am." "I am Amy Bennett, Douglas Bennett's daughter." I stiffened. "Okay." I wanted to apologize for what my father and brother did. It was wrong. There is no excuse for it. I know my words do not fix anything, but I needed to say it. She handed me an envelope and left before I could respond. Inside was a handwritten note apologizing again, and a check for $500 toward replacing the destroyed vegetables, even though restitution had already been paid. I kept the note, but donated the check to a local food bank in her name. Karen Kendrick moved out of the neighborhood that summer. I heard she relocated to North Carolina, where presumably she would find a new HOA to terrorize. I did not feel particularly vindicated by her departure, just relieved. The vegetable stand remained a fixture on Maple Drive. It became something bigger than I had intended, a symbol of standing up against petty tyranny and bureaucratic overreach. Local media did follow-up stories each year on the anniversary, always framing it as a feel-good tale of community and individual rights. But for me, it was simpler than that. I liked growing vegetables. I liked my neighbors. And I was not going to let anyone, HOA president or otherwise, tell me I could not do something I had every legal right to do. On summer evenings, I would sit on the bench Mike built and watch neighbors stop by the stand. Kids would pick out tomatoes for their parents. Elderly folks would chat about gardening techniques. Young couples would browse while their dogs waited patiently. Mrs. Chen often joined me on those evenings. "You know what I like most about your stand?" she asked one evening. "What's that?" "It reminds people that we are a community, not just houses next to each other following rules. Rules have their place, but people matter more." I agreed completely. The whole experience taught me something valuable. Authority without accountability becomes tyranny, even in something as mundane as a homeowners association. People like Karen exist everywhere, in every level of bureaucracy and organization, convinced that rules matter more than reason and control matters more than community. But people like Mrs. Chen, Mike Johnson, and Linda Martinez exist too. People who stand up for what's right even when it is inconvenient. People who understand that laws and rules should serve the community, not the other way around. My vegetable stand was never really about vegetables. It was about principle. About not backing down when you know you are right. About having the courage to fight even when it is expensive, time-consuming, and frustrating. Would I do it again? Absolutely. Even knowing the stress, the legal fees, the vandalism, and the months of harassment. Because some things matter more than avoiding conflict. The following year, I was approached by several other HOA residents from different neighborhoods in Pennsylvania. They had similar stories of overreach and abuse of authority. I started a small consulting service, helping people understand their legal rights when facing HOA disputes. I did not charge much, just enough to cover my time. It was not about profit. It was about helping people who felt powerless against organizations that were supposed to serve them, but had instead become adversarial. Robert Mills helped me establish a nonprofit called the Community Rights Advocacy Group. We offered free legal consultations for HOA disputes and published guides on residents' rights under Pennsylvania law. The vegetable stand continued thriving. By the third year, I had added a small farm store selling not just my own produce, but also products from other local farmers: honey, eggs, fresh bread, and handmade crafts. I employed 4 part-time workers, all neighbors who enjoyed the work and the community atmosphere. The Oakmont Hills HOA became one of the more progressive associations in the region under Linda's continued leadership. They focused on genuine community improvement, updating playground equipment, organizing neighborhood events, and maintaining common areas. The harassment of residents over minor rule violations stopped. I never forgot the lesson of those difficult months. Power, even small power like an HOA presidency, can corrupt. People get attached to authority and forget why that authority was granted in the first place. The purpose of an HOA is to maintain and improve the community, not to control and restrict residents. Every time someone stopped by my stand and mentioned they were dealing with their own HOA issues, I listened to their story. Sometimes I could help, sometimes I could not. But I always reminded them that they had rights, and those rights mattered. The legal precedent from my case was cited in several other HOA disputes across Pennsylvania. Judges referenced it when ruling against HOAs that tried to override legal permits or exceeded their authority. Robert Mills said it became known as the vegetable stand case in legal circles. One afternoon, about 4 years after the initial fine, I was working at the stand when a young couple approached. They introduced themselves as law students from the University of Pittsburgh. "We studied your case in our property law class," the young woman said excitedly. "It is a perfect example of how private governance structures can exceed their authority and why legal remedies matter." I smiled. "I just wanted to sell tomatoes." "But you stood up for your rights," the young man added. "That matters. A lot of people would have just paid the fine and given up." After they left, I thought about what he said. He was right. Many people would have given up. The path of least resistance is always tempting. Pay the fine, take down the stand, avoid the conflict. But giving in to unreasonable authority only empowers it to be more unreasonable next time. My vegetable stand became a permanent part of the neighborhood landscape. Children who bought cherry tomatoes from me as elementary school kids were now teenagers working summer jobs at the expanded farm store. The Patel's son, who helped me on Saturdays years ago, was now in college studying agricultural science. Mrs. Chen passed away peacefully in her sleep one winter night during the 5th year. Her daughter came from Seattle for the funeral. She found me at the vegetable stand the day before the service. "Mom loved this place," she said, tears in her eyes. She told me it reminded her of the vegetable markets in Taiwan when she was a girl. "She was so proud of you for standing up to the HOA. Your mom was a good friend. She supported me when I needed it most. She believed in doing what is right, even when it is hard. I think that is why she liked you." I attended Mrs. Chen's funeral, along with most of the neighborhood. The service was beautiful, full of stories about her kindness and strength. I thought about how she had stood up in that HOA meeting years ago, her small frame radiating determination as she defended me against Karen's accusations. The vegetable stand continued, season after season. It became part of my identity and part of the neighborhood's identity. People gave directions using it as a landmark. Turn left at the vegetable stand on Maple Drive. Douglas Bennett completed his community service and probation. I saw him occasionally around town. We never spoke, but he always looked away when our paths crossed. His son Craig moved to Ohio, apparently trying to start fresh somewhere else. Karen Kendrick's name occasionally popped up in online HOA forums, usually connected to complaints about overreach in her new North Carolina neighborhood. Some people never change. The farm store expanded again in year 6. I added a small cafe section serving coffee and fresh baked goods. It became a morning gathering spot for neighbors before work. The profits were modest, but that was never the point. I hired a young woman named Sarah Martinez, Linda's niece, to manage the cafe. She had dreams of opening her own restaurant someday and wanted experience. She was excellent, bringing creativity and enthusiasm to the operation. The Oakmont Hills HOA even featured the farm store in their community newsletter, praising it as an example of local entrepreneurship and community building. The irony was not lost on anyone who remembered the original dispute. I framed the original $2,000 fine and hung it on the wall of the farm store, along with the newspaper articles about the case. It became a conversation starter, a reminder of how far we had come. Tourists sometimes stopped by after reading about the story online. They would take photos and buy vegetables, amused by the David versus Goliath narrative. I always downplayed the drama, focusing instead on the quality of the produce and the importance of community. By year 8, the farm store employed 12 people part-time. We had become a genuine fixture of the local food scene. Pittsburgh food bloggers reviewed our seasonal offerings. The cafe had regular customers who came daily. Children who had never known the neighborhood without the vegetable stand thought it had always been there. I still grew most of the vegetables myself, though I had partnered with 3 other local farmers to ensure consistent supply. My greenhouse had expanded to 3 structures, allowing year-round production of cold-weather crops. The community rights advocacy group had helped over 200 families navigate HOA disputes. Most were resolved through education and negotiation. A handful went to court, and we had won or settled favorably in each case. The organization had grown beyond what I imagined, with volunteer lawyers and advocates across Pennsylvania. On the 10th anniversary of receiving that first fine, the neighborhood threw a celebration at the farm store. Over 300 people attended. Linda, still HOA president, gave a speech about community, rights, and the importance of standing up for principles. 10 years ago, our HOA made a terrible mistake, Linda said. We allowed power to corrupt purpose. We forgot that our job was to serve this community, not control it. Nathan Hart reminded us of that. He did not just fight for his right to sell vegetables. He fought for all of our rights to be treated fairly and reasonably. She presented me with a plaque recognizing my contribution to the community. It was touching, though I felt somewhat embarrassed by the attention. Mike Johnson spoke next, talking about how the vegetable stand had transformed the neighborhood culture from one of fear and rule following to one of community and connection. Before Nathan's stand, neighbors barely talked to each other, Mike said. We were all afraid of getting fined for some minor violation. Now we gather here, we talk, we know each other. This place became the heart of our neighborhood. Several neighbors shared their own stories. The Patels talked about how working at the stand had taught their son valuable lessons about business and community service. A young mother described how she had learned about nutrition and cooking from conversations at the cafe. An elderly man credited the stand's fresh vegetables with helping him improve his health after a heart attack scare. I gave a brief speech, thanking everyone for their support over the years. I acknowledged that the fight had been difficult but worth it, not just for me but for the principle it established. 10 years ago, I just wanted to sell vegetables I grew in my backyard, I said. I did not expect a fight. I did not want legal battles and media attention. But sometimes life puts you in a position where you have to choose between principle and convenience. I chose principle, and I am glad I did. Not because I won, but because of what we built together. This stand, this store, this cafe, it belongs to all of us. It is proof that communities thrive when people stand up for what is right, and when organizations remember they exist to serve, not to control. The celebration lasted into the evening. Children played in the grass near the stand while adults enjoyed food and conversation. Someone brought a guitar and played folk songs as the sun set. It was perfect. Later that night, after everyone had left and I was closing up, I stood in front of the stand and looked at it. The structure I had built 10 years ago was still there, though expanded and improved. The cedar wood had aged beautifully. The chalkboard still displayed prices and fun facts. Fresh vegetables still filled the wooden crates. It was just a vegetable stand, but it had become something more. A symbol, a gathering place. A reminder that ordinary people can stand up to unreasonable authority and win. I thought about Karen Kendrick and that first fine, $2,000 for doing nothing wrong. It seemed absurd now, almost funny, but at the time, it had been infuriating and frightening. The threat of $5,000 in fines, legal action, and community censure had been real. If I had not known my rights, if I had not been able to afford a good lawyer, if I had not had community support, the outcome might have been different. That thought bothered me. How many people gave up legitimate rights because fighting was too expensive or too scary? That is why the community rights advocacy group mattered. That is why I told my story whenever anyone asked. Not for ego or recognition, but because people needed to know they could fight back against unjust authority. The next morning, the vegetable stand opened as usual. Sarah arrived early to start the cafe. Customers began arriving around 7. The rhythm of the day was comfortable and familiar. A young man I did not recognize approached around 9 o'clock. He looked nervous. "Are you Nathan Hart?" "I am. I live in Cranberry Township. Our HOA is trying to fine me $5,000 for having solar panels installed. They say it violates aesthetic standards." "But I have a permit from the township. Someone told me you might be able to help," I smiled. "Let me get you some coffee and we can talk." And so it continued. The vegetable stand kept operating. The farm store kept growing. The community rights advocacy group kept helping people. Life went on, richer and more meaningful because of the decision I made 10 years ago to fight for what was right. I never regretted it. Not for a single moment. Standing up to Karen Kendrick and the HOA was one of the best decisions of my life. Not because of what I gained, but because of what I learned. That principles matter, that community matters, and that ordinary people have more power than they realize when they have the courage to use it. The vegetable stand was still there on Maple Drive, and it would be there for many years to come. A testament to what happens when someone says no to unjust authority and yes to community and principle.